Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to our Liquid Lowdown. I am Bob Stevens, copy director, and again, with a Q&A chat window that is available to you, although I can't see you, I can't hear you. Please feel free to post questions during the chat at any time. We'll do our best to address them with the time we have left or after the fact. And with that in mind, I would just say, because I can't see you, I can't see if you're raising your hands, but I just want to ask right off the bat, in terms of the chat window, type yes if you or your organization have tried to implement generative AI in any way. And just looking for some interaction here in the chat window. We want to find out, trying to get a bead, a pulse, finding out who's dipped their toe in, who's using it on a daily basis, right? There are very few out there that haven't done this. And chances are that we've delivered this presentation a few times, but the chances are there's a wide spectrum of those who understand the tool at a different level. Now, for those of you who said yes, would any of you say, if you're comfortable, have you found it a success? And if so, give me a thumbs up. And then beyond that, if you want to share with the group, did it help you solve a specific problem or achieve a specific goal? Was there an email campaign, a blog post, a web copy, an advertisement, anything related to marketing that GenAI and ChatGPT specifically has helped you do? I know that's a lot. So, and while you're typing that, web copy, social sites, great. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else? Email copy, yep, we're going to cover that. Fantastic. I would say, of the people I've met using ChatGPT, some have found it to be a waste of time. They just can't get a hang of it. Others are looking to optimize it for their marketing needs. And then there are some who are super users. They're using it every single day. You're always on the lookout for more tips. Newsletters, yeah, great. Prospecting cadence, editing. Editing's a big one, right? Fantastic. I know that a lot of webinars, a lot of YouTube tutorials you'll see online, they start with a lot of basics. And with ChatGPT, it's interesting because basics aren't always so basic. Client pain points. Oh, that's a great one. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. Ad copy segmentation, web content, presentation development. Yep, that's a good one too. Okay, so with all these, thank you so much for sharing that. It's nice to gauge where this audience is. Everyone's different, right? I would just say that talking about the basics, we want to address this and ChatGPT from the challenges you face. We know you. We get you. We're all marketers here. We're all friends. You're wearing a lot of hats. Your environment is always changing. And I would say that among wearing your hats, you've got so much to do. You're trying to engage not just your audience, but maybe multiple audience segments. You're creating ongoing campaigns, probably concurrent campaigns, not just one at a time. Within those campaigns, you have to develop content that's not only compelling, but now personalized because you need to compete with everyone else. And then we're marketers, we're in business. So you're trying to meet some quarterly goals. At the end of the day, you're looking to increase brand awareness, efficiency, revenue. And oh, by the way, you probably have a very small team, or it's just you by yourself. It's a lot. Now, of course, the good news, we already know this. You're already using this. GenAI can help. ChatGPT can help. While it's not a silver bullet, it's still an amazing tool. And like many tools, the basics can be glossed over and you want to get to the advanced, right? You just want to go forward and be a super user right away. I wanted to cover just a few things right off the bat before we get into some use cases. And that is essentially, you've seen this in every version, right? ChatGPT 3.5, 4.0, soon coming out with 5. At its simplest, you've heard this definition that ChatGPT is creating content based on patterns. It's based on examples it's been trained on. We say, yeah, I know, I get it. This is more important than most of us take this for granted. Just because it's trained on this wealth of information, books, videos, websites, many articles, Some of you might have heard this too, that there's an algorithm bias. It's not trained on everything equally. So with that, we need to view this with a critical lens. We need to understand ChatGPT and use our critical thinking. We need to verify the information. We need to look for consistent responses from the tool. And if you look very carefully, every time you enter in some text in that little the text field, it does say ChatGPT can make mistakes. And then it says consider, just consider checking important information. I would go a step further. I would seek out the source of information whenever you hear an absolute statement or something that sounds like it's an authority. Just because these absolute statements are stated because of the nature of ChatGPT, it's responding conversationally and you're asking for information, but we don't need to accept it as gospel just because it sounds authoritative. I would say everyone's most used prompt, when there is a claim, when there's an idea, you can always follow up with, number one, what's the source of this information? Where did you source this from? List the websites out. And then number two, you can actually go into your preferences within ChatGPT and ask it every time to respond to you with a specific guideline and saying, if you ever are quoting sources, please provide the website. We're asking you to prompt responsibly, as it were. And I think, again, because we're focused so much on our prompting knowledge, our prompting prowess, we can forget one of the most critical skills that's out there, and that's holding this tool accountable. Now, this isn't to dismiss moral, ethical, legal concerns that are still in discussion. But while that's still being sussed out, while that's still being decided by our leaders, we can be leaders and make sure there's accuracy and that we're building trust, and that's our responsibility, not necessarily on AI right now. So just please prompt responsibility, or please prompt responsibly. I'll get off my soapbox for now. Okay, right into it. A lot of you have started using ChatGPT in this way. You start simple, you're testing it out, you're learning as you go, and you're adapting. Again, with so many different backgrounds here in the call, as you're integrating this, you can master some basic prompts and formulas in a low-risk setting. You're not necessarily using it on your largest campaign. We talked about maybe unearthing some client pain points, looking for generating ideas on articles for web content, presentation development, and others. Just to gauge you again, give me a thumbs up or a yes if you've seen this formula: act as, perform, format, context, and example. Have you seen this kind of traveling around, and have you used it? This is I would say, often repeated formula that has been going out a lot. If you look really carefully, you might recognize these prompts with a marketing mindset, with a marketing perspective, because this is a basic marketing strategy, like Marketing 101. This mirrors a creative brief. Essentially, what you're doing here is you're saying, act as a copywriter, act as a industry expert. I want you to act in this setting and perform a specific task. I want the output to be in a specific format, an email, a blog, insights about my audience. And then very importantly is the context. What's the background? What's the market situation? What is the competitive landscape? And then at the very end, if you can, providing that example that says, here's going to set the style. This is, like all things you've heard again, the more specific, the better. The higher quality input, the higher quality output. Better ingredients, better pizza. I don't think they can use that anymore, though. So let's look at an example, right? This is almost a Mad Lib marketing style. Here's a great example. Acting as a copywriting expert, we'd like you to write a persuasive 3-paragraph email, ending with a strong call to action. There's our format. And then give me some context to who? Clients. How about clients interested in wealth management, financial services? What about some background? What's the value prop? What's their goal? What is their dream? They're driven by a need to feel secure about their future while they can still enjoy the legacy they're building today. So I'm taking bits and pieces from my marketing plan and infusing it into this prompt, and then providing that example saying, I'd like you to reference this brochure copy or these 3 emails as a guide for style and tone. You are providing these audience insights. You're setting the bar for tone and style. And even with this, even with a very specific prompt like this one, I would still expect a response that, again, going back to basics, it's going to be generated from patterns, generalized information. This is not going to give you your finalized version. I doubt that any of you have found that the ChatGPT right off the bat gives you exactly what you need, right? This is everywhere. And I would say that because it's so pervasive, it's not misinformation, but it's not the full story. It's not the full context. You still need to refine this. This is the starting point. This is the generation of content that's, instead of you staring at a blank page, you've got a starting point. Now, while most of you are probably here today is not to learn this prompt, this is everywhere. You're thinking, hey, that's great, but okay, what if I don't have a wealth of professional marketing resources for context? What if my message lacks a unique voice? What if I don't have a brand that's perfectly resonating with my audience? I need ChatGPT to help me with this higher level stuff. So taking a step back just for a moment, I want to put this all in context. The AI rallying call, you've heard this from staunch advocates. It's not about replacing the human touch. It's about enhancing the human touch. This is the ideal scenario. At its core, the foundation of marketing, it's going to be built on creativity, strategy. It comes down to relationships. Branding and marketing is about connecting. And your greatest asset isn't really this tool. This is just a tool. Your greatest asset is that you bring emotional intelligence to this tool. In making those connections and understanding that bond that you're building with your audience, with your tribe, with your community, that you're constantly trying to make that connection, think of it this way. If all of this information is out there, there's a universe of information. ChatGPT is this brand new, super-powered telescope that allows you to access information and hone in on things you never had before. I would say your emotional intelligence can be like your North Star. That's your guide. And if you keep that in mind, I think you can use the tool really well. So let's get right into it. Some use cases. One of my favorite things to do is at the very outset, you're looking to craft some really killer content. You want to stand out from a crowd. That comes down to strategy. That comes down to creativity. How are we going to do this? I pulled this from a fellow strategist who's online, and I've had much success with it. This is using counterintuitive prompts. This is almost pitting ChatGPT against itself. And you're unearthing failed logic. You are challenging belief systems. As the examples here, start with the first prompt. And I've got a nice example here. What are 3 common cliches? What are 3 stereotypes about customers who are going to support local coffee shops over corporate chains? Now, ChatGPT will generate those cliches and stereotypes. And then as you follow up with that, you can say, write 3 paradoxes about those 3 cliches using creative wordplay about the above. You're starting to challenge those, and you're going to start, your mind is going to start reframing its perspective and gaining new insights and perspectives from not just your audience point of view, but those overlaps between the audience, the brand, and the competitive market. Things that people say all the time. Everyone knows a Subaru is the most trusted vehicle. Everybody knows that Starbucks is overpriced. These are belief systems that are opinions. And by challenge them, you can unearth these insights and apply them to your own brand. Another way of doing this is asking about limitations. When you think of a limitation, you think about a weakness. We also know that weaknesses can be pivoted, leveraged as strengths. So here we can say, what are 3 limitations of purchasing antique furniture online with a no refund policy? I may or may not be speaking from experience, but that's a different webinar. So then you say, follow up with the prompt. All right, those limitations, tell me why they're a good thing. How could I position those or reposition those in a competitive marketplace so that I stand out from a crowd? And in this way, you can start crafting some really unique content with the background of taking that kind of strategy. Another one, testing your value prop. This is so role play. Let me make a disclaimer here. This is not market research. This is not. This does not negate the need for surveys or focus groups. This isn't verified information. I wouldn't necessarily take this and cite it in your next report to the board. But again, we want to use our critical thinking and our emotional intelligence. And more than likely, you have so much experience dealing with your community, with your audience, with your customers, that you can suss out what sounds correct and what doesn't. So here, this is another tool to help you gain perspective. I've developed a great value prop, and I want to target, I'm looking to help a business with home improvements. I want to find out more about how this is going to resonate with audience. So in a role play, I'm going to ask ChatGPT, act as a homeowner who's interested in renovating their kitchen, but they're wary about contractors overcharging for services, and then engaging you with conversation. Now, again, these prompts are simplified. We do want them to be as specific as possible. So going back to that very first act as, context, background, the more you can infuse into these, the better. But for our demonstration purposes, we didn't want to take up an entire slide of copy. Another one, act as a single mother of 4 who wants to go back to school, but doesn't want to go into debt with student loans. And again, you can kind of play back and forth, understanding what's there. I just saw in the chat, Michael, thank you so much. I love asking ChatGPT to help write prompts. This is another one. You can start out a prompt by writing act as, and then at the end of your prompt say, is there anything here missing that would improve this prompt to have a better discussion in a role play scenario? And ChatGPT will either say, nope, that's all I need, or sure, if you add context, if you give me more specificity, tell me more about your brand, you can improve that conversation. Thank you so much for contributing. Here's one, creative block. Man, we've all been here. You're just hitting your head against the wall, nothing's coming. To start really, to jumpstart that process, there are tried and true methods of brainstorming. 2 of which here I've highlighted, conceptual blockbusting and lateral thinking. You've probably used these already, you just haven't assigned a title to them. Conceptual blockbusting, it's actually a great book, also covers things like using metaphor, analogy, exaggeration. Think of almost any billboard you've seen driving on the highway. And then lateral thinking is going to be connecting 2 very dissimilar ideas, finding a connection between the 2 to come up with a unique perspective. Any creative principle or brainstorming principle that you know of, you can ask ChatGPT to use that. In terms of prompts, the examples here, 10 creative ideas. List 10 creative ideas using conceptual blockbusting to increase sales of sparkling wine during a non-celebratory season. When's the downtime and how can we figure that out? Or generate 10 family-friendly ideas using lateral thinking for a father-daughter cooking challenge that could be easily shared on social media. All these things are starting points, but I also want to, another word of caution here, when you're prompting without specificity, when you are not providing context, there's not really clear direction on style or tone, ChatGPT, for whatever reason, can respond with, I'm just going to say it, sickening, sappy, flowery, poetic language, and every once in a while, the dreaded dad joke comes up. It's debilitating. It's frustrating. And you respond to ChatGPT and say, no, that's not what I was looking for. For pun protection, Add constraints. Follow up. It might give the wrong answer the first time or something with that kind of alliterative style with flowery language. You can always follow up your prompts and say, can you write that again, but without excessive humor? I'd like to see this again with something that doesn't undercut my primary message. However, please maintain an informal and approachable tone. So we're adding specificity. And then did I miss one? Editing. Yes, we saw this in the chat. So simplifying your message is one of the greatest challenges we have as marketers. We know it's got to be short, it's got to be memorable, it has to fit within 127 characters on Facebook. This is one of maybe the highly used tools or highly used prompts within ChatGPT is to edit something down, to summarize. It's great at doing that. In terms of editing your work, we look at it for, we've generated the idea. Can you rewrite this from its long form into something a bit shorter? Can you summarize this? Can you improve the message to create more urgency? I'm having that difficulty. I just hit an obstacle. I'm so close, but I need to optimize it for improved clarity or impact. I would say I usually keep the thesaurus tab open on a daily basis. Now I keep the ChatGPT tab open on a daily basis as I'm generating messages there as well. And then in terms of repurposing, we do so much to build these incredible campaigns. We do so much to orchestrate this across multiple channels. We put our heart, soul, blood, sweat, tears into these incredible campaigns, and we put it out there, we launch it, and it drives growth, and it's fantastic. And then the content monster says, thanks, more please. I would say repurpose this, take this example based on something, do an email drip campaign about us page. Can you translate this into an explainer video? There are ways to repurpose that content that we're always looking for. Now, I know this is a lot in a short amount of time, and I can hear many of you saying, well, this is all great in theory. These are all things that are happening on a daily basis. I've tried some of these things. Sometimes the hypothetical just does not work in a real world scenario. So a few final thoughts. I'd like to say one of my new favorite acronyms is FAIL, first attempt in learning. Everyone needs to fail. Everyone needs to understand this is a process. And I would say, to encourage you, this is still relatively brand new technology. Despite how many millions of users are on this, very few of them know how to use it well. And the fact that you are attending this webinar shows you have not just a general interest, but a desire to stay current. So as you get to know this tool, keep that mindset of a student. As always, make your prompt specific, have fun, and use your emotional intelligence. In terms of what we presented here, I hope you enjoyed this. I know it's a short time. If it's helpful, please pass it on. If you feel this is valuable, show some love, share it on social media. You can go directly to our blog. If you're like me and you couldn't capture the screenshots quickly enough, on our blog, I've written an article on this as well. You can go there. And if you really want to keep your finger on the pulse, I would sign up for our newsletter at liquidint.com. That's going to give you even more resources, not just on ChatGPT, but SEO, marketing, branding, everything digital marketing.